All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ryan Susky. I'm Director of Programs at the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, and I'll be the facilitator for you today for the Unit 4 hearing for Joseph T. Henley Middle School for the National We the People Invitational. In just a minute, I'm going to have the judges introduce themselves, followed by the students, and then we'll begin the hearing. The process for the hearing today is that students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge follow-up questions. Now, my microphone is going to be muted during the hearing, but I will be holding up time cards for the students. For that reason, we do recommend that you go ahead and put your computer on gallery view so that you can see my signals, and of course, you can see your colleagues as well. Once the hearing has finished, the judges will give some brief feedback to the teams, and then we'll conclude. With that, I'll go ahead and hand things over to your chairperson to begin today's introductions.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. I'm Diana Owen. I'm a political scientist at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Deshawn Whitaker, We the People teacher in Charles County Public Schools in Maryland.
And my name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the political science department at Clemson University in South Carolina.
And if you could now introduce yourselves and your teachers, that would be nice.
Hi, I'm Dan Diamond, and I'm on the Unit 4 team for Henley Middle School.
Hi, I'm Claire Key. I'm on the Unit 4 team, and I'm really excited to be here again.
Hi, I'm Sadie Adams. I'm an 8th grader in the Unit 4 team, and I'm really excited to be here as well.
Hi, I'm Elsie, and I'm also on the Unit 4 team at Henley, and I'm really excited to be here. And our two teachers are Miss Curry and Miss Boshang.
Great.
Great. Thanks very much. So it's probably no surprise to you that the question for today is number 2. If a law has been properly passed by the lawmaking branches of a democratic government, why should judges have the power to declare it unconstitutional? Do you agree or disagree with Robert Dahl? Why? What is judicial review and why is it controversial? What has been the impact of judicial review on American society? Once the Supreme Court has decided that a law is unconstitutional, what power, if any, do the people have to change the Constitution? Please begin.
The judicial branch should have the power to declare a law unconstitutional because they protect the rights of American citizens outlined in the Constitution. Judicial review is based on the concept of separation of powers and is one of the main characteristics of our government today. Judicial review is a way to judge various types of cases, those arising under federal law, but it did not indicate whether legislative or executive action could be declared unconstitutional. An American example of judicial power comes from the Supreme Court itself in the Marbury versus Madison case of 1803. All courts, not just the Supreme Court, had the power to strike down legislation and executive action that are inconsistent with the federal or state constitution. Significant cases such as Brown versus Board of Education, Loving versus Virginia, and Roe versus Wade are a few of the thousands of cases that previous legislation was found to be unconstitutional and were subsequently overturned. Our judicial system proves balances and prevents ruthless control, upholding the laws of the Constitution and protecting inalienable rights.
In order for every branch of the United States government to best serve its country, laws and regulations have been made over time. However, as America progresses as a society, certain rules can become out of place and or restricting and unnecessary. This is where judicial review comes in. If the court decides to use its power and decides a law is unconstitutional, then it becomes null and void and is no longer legally enforced. However, although it may seem like a very straightforward process, judicial review has become very controversial as time has gone on. One of the best and more controversial examples, given its time period, comes from the Brown versus Board of Education court case. During the case, the Supreme Court decided that racial segregation should not be allowed within public schools, and that the separate but equal facilities were actually inferior to that of all white schools. As well as many court cases and decisions throughout history, the problem facing judicial review is that it's not specifically mentioned within the Constitution itself. After the outcome of the 1800 Jefferson versus Adams election, the government decided that the jury's decision to overrule was necessary. And since then, judicial review has helped continue to help form and shape a modern America.
Judicial review has made a definite impact on society in the United States. Even before it was implemented in the American court system with Marbury versus Madison, Alexander Hamilton wrote of its concept in Federalist Paper 78. Whenever a particular statute contravenes the Constitution, it will be the duty of the judicial tribunals to adhere to the latter and disregard the former. In the landmark case Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court struck down state laws that banned same-sex marriage, which is an example of the power of judicial review. However, there has also been times where judicial review has resulted in oppression. In Dred Scott versus Sanford, the Supreme Court struck down the Missouri Compromise statute and ruled that the Constitution was not meant to include American citizenship for Black people. This was later overturned by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. In Korematsu versus United States, the Supreme Court ruled that the need to protect the US from espionage outweighed the rights of Japanese people living in America. All of these decisions have impacted American society and have sparked debates amongst the public over the power of judicial review and the laws it has overturned.
Even once the Supreme Court declares the law unconstitutional, there's still a way for this decision to be changed. The way to cause this change is by amending the Constitution itself, so the judgment that the law is unconstitutional is no longer valid. Amending the Constitution is difficult to achieve, as Article 5 states, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. Later also adds, the Constitution will be amended, quote, when ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of the several states. As representatives and senators are elected by the people, citizens have a say in what amendments are attempted to be passed through the representatives they elected. An example of this is the 16th Amendment, passed after the Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company case. In conclusion, the people can indeed amend the Constitution to pass laws through the government, even after being checked by judicial review.
Great, thanks so much for that nice prepared statement. I want to probe a little bit more about Marbury versus Madison. How did Chief Justice John Marshall justify the establishment of judicial review? How did he make the case for judicial review?
So Chief Justice Marshall, first with Marbury, he narrowed down the case to 3 different questions. Did Marbury have the right to his commission, and was that right infringed? If so, should the government provide a remedy? And was the writ of mandamus the correct remedy for that? And so he found that Marbury did have the right to his commission, and the government provided him a remedy, but a writ of mandamus was not the correct way it was not the correct remedy for that. Saying that the Supreme Court did not have the power to issue a writ of mandamus, thus striking down the Judiciary Act of 1789, specifically Section 13. And this established judicial review by both solving a way out of the dilemma to make sure he's not pandering to the government, and also being indifferent on both sides, and thus establishing judicial review in a really, really intelligent way.
Thank you. Do you think that judicial review is critical to protecting the rights of the minority against the will of the majority?
Absolutely, I would definitely agree with that. But that's also why I think we do need to take a second look at judicial review and make sure it's actually, I think, easier for the common person to try and make a change within the Constitution. Because right now, it's extremely difficult for anything to become amended within the Constitution. And although extremely important amendments have gone through, the fact that it can take so long before your case can get to the Supreme Court by having to, go through 2/3 of Congress, and even then, the Supreme Court can't actually pick and choose what they want. It has to be brought to them. So that's the way that the Supreme Court gets checked. But at the same time, it makes it so that unless you have the available resources, your case is not going to go all the way through, and you can continue to be oppressed.
Another thing is that the government initially didn't plan having like the judicial part of the government, like in Marbury versus Madison, like that's just an example. And other parts of the government like already have so much going on, like the judicial review should have this, and it should be, of the judicial review, and should have that responsibility over all the other branches, because other branches already have other stuff. And the judicial branch branch also allows like states to have their own individual like ideas, such as like abortion and stuff like that. Like it gives the states like a way to have their own point of view, but still being like the same main concept of the United States.
Often when I hear judicial review discussed, I hear discussions also of judicial activism. What is judicial activism and how does that relate to judicial review?
Judicial activism, I think, in my opinion, is something that we should all consider when it relates to judicial review. For example, we see with the attempts by the current government to increase the amount of people increase the amount of justices in the Supreme Court. Personally, I find that, and any of my teammates are able to disagree with me, but personally, I find that not a good idea, because if a government has the ability to increase the amount of justices in a court by anything, because then they can essentially dilute the power of the court by putting in justices that are part of their own political party or who agree with their policies. And that's a way for the executive branch to abuse their power by essentially being able to control the judicial branch through packing the court, as it's sometimes called.
I think that there's a reason why the Supreme Court does have its check on it. It's almost like a sword, but with no stab. The only thing it can do is execute an order that the executive branch then has to follow. And if they were to overstep their power, I think it would blatantly go against checks and balances.
And definitely, to jump in again, definitely the judicial branch should have the power to go beyond the applicable law in order to consider things that might have been unconstitutional beforehand, because we see as society progresses and becomes more modern, some policies become outdated, become racist, become frankly not applicable to current life. And so the judicial branch should have the power to go beyond the law in order to make the government more sustainable and more equitable for everyone.
Do you think that the Supreme Court justices should be elected by the people, or do you think that the current system for appointing justices is working?
I think, well, if presidents can and the executive branch can appoint judges, then it can easily be stacked based on or influenced. The Supreme Court can easily be influenced by like political beliefs, and while they are basing it off the Constitution, everything there are biases in the Supreme Court. So by having the people elect, that could make a more just system in the Supreme Court.
Although the people do elect the officials that then decide who goes into the Supreme Court, I feel that a small group of specific people deciding who are the most powerful judges in the entirety of the U.S., I think that by having people vote in judges every maybe 10 years or so and not giving them their job for life and instead having to be reelected at certain times, it'll make sure that they keep judges who are more progressive and understand a current America and are okay with the fact that they may have to turn over certain decisions made by previous court members.
Yeah, also back to your original question, I think that the people should should elect them, because it's all people, and the people are representing and what the majority of America wants. If somebody else were to elect them, then it wouldn't be of what all America wants or what all America stands for.
All right. And last question. If in your world you said that you think that the people should elect the justices, do you think that the people would be informed enough to make the best decision for the country?
Personally, I think that the people do have a good amount of information on the government, although I think that definitely educating the people more would be a very good step in order for them to vote in justices that they feel represent themselves. So yes, I do think that they are not as informed as is optimal, but I think they do definitely have as much information as is necessary.
Thank you.
So thanks very much for your presentation, and now we'll give you some comments. I thought that you did a really good job on your opening statement. You gave us a definition of judicial review. You talked about the relationship of judicial review to separation of powers, which I thought was good. I also thought it was important for you to mention that judicial review is not just something that's kind of pertains to the Supreme Court, but it also pertains to other courts as well. And I also, throughout your presentation, you talk about state and federal kind of jurisdictions that are affected by judicial review. You mentioned appropriate Supreme Court cases, and you had a good knowledge of that. I like the fact that you brought in the Federalist Papers, Federalist 78, and you brought in specific articles of the Constitution and amendments, which I thought really tied it back into the constitutional kind of relationship with the question. I thought on the question about where you talked about the writ of mandamus, that's a very sophisticated concept, and you did a really good job of talking about the three questions that were raised in the case of Marbury versus Madison, and thought that was a really, really kind of strong response. I thought you all responded quite well to all of the different questions that we asked. I think that you had some, you agreed, but sometimes you didn't disagree. But when you disagreed, it was respectful and contributed to a really nice conversation. So great job, and thank you.
Yes, I agree with everything my colleague said. I especially appreciate that you were able to talk about how judicial review oppressed certain groups of people. I like that you brought in the Komatsu case and Dred Scott, and then you also showed how the Supreme Court tried to right their wrongs with other court cases. And I appreciated your discussion about the three questions of John Marshall and how you teased that out of how judicial review was established, because it is a little complicated, and you were able to explain that very well. I also like that you were able to talk about how you mentioned to keeping the justices more progressive. You would like to see people elect the justices, and I wish we had a little bit more time to talk about that, and how maybe that, I would like to know if you think that would be probably the best for our country, or not necessarily. Like, how could that influence the justices in a different way than what it should be intended to do? Overall, you did a really great job today, and I really enjoyed listening to you.
Yeah, I agree. I thought you did a very good job, and the third judge is usually just left repeating what his colleagues said. I wanted to mention two or three things that are a bit different. I really like the fact that you talked about the fact that a case has to be brought to the courts for them to exercise judicial review. So a very fundamental difference between the courts and other branches of government. It's a more passive branch of government, and that can't set its own agenda until someone brings them a case. I would, in terms of how we go about selecting judges, you and I are in the bizarre situation. We're in the only two states in the country that have legislative appointment of judges at the state level. Could we draw on your experience in Virginia to inform what should or should not be done at the national level?
Unfortunately, we do have to go ahead and cut the feedback just a little bit short because the students need to go ahead and get to their next hearing. But thank you, everyone.
I'll say is, I wish I were as optimistic about you that people have this information, all the information they need, but you do. So congratulations, you did a good job. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely, congratulations.
Thank you
so much.